Welcome back. Again, I'm speaking with Kristina Walter, Director of the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center at the National Security Agency. And Kristina, before the break, we were discussing how your AI Security Center is helping to take on AI threats. And I'm curious, you mentioned the different classes of AI threats from IP theft to how AI itself can be misused by threat actors. But I'm curious in terms of detecting AI generated content that might be malicious. Are you seeing anything promising there, and how are you tackling that issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a lot of researchers who are focused on this issue and who are working with academia on this issue to authenticate data. So making sure that we know if something is a fake or not. But in the long run, we're really looking at working on uh, credentialing and recommendations for how to credential this type of media so that if something is AI generated, it is watermarked appropriately. If something is authentic, it is watermarked appropriately. And so our teams are really working to get that guidance out so that the community has something to rally around to make sure that everybody's tracking which things are AI generated and which are not.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, a concerning issue for just about anyone out there who uses the internet these days. I think, your Enduring Security Framework, the ESF group that your center participates in, has put out a lot of guidance on just kind of these big types of threats, cyber threats that everyone should be concerned about. What is next for the Enduring Security Framework in terms of what you're tackling with your partners?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Enduring Security Framework is really a body that's led by CISA, NSA, and industry. So they have an active voice in the topics that we're working on. And so they have published papers over the last several years related to 5G, related to secure by design, as well as looking at how industry can play a bigger role in standards bodies. Was the latest publication that they had. And so we're really looking at how we can have the most threat informed conversations with industry in that forum. And so we're looking at, when we talked about PRC earlier and the way the telecommunications fabric of the United States is being leveraged by malicious actors to target, that's a topic that we really want to look at from that enduring security framework, where we can gain all those perspectives to put out guidance to the community to use. So that is the topic area that we've really been focused on and how we want to narrow that down with our partners.
Got it. And do you that you mentioned it's telecommunications that are being targeted? That's the specific focus.
Well, what we're looking at is really the activity that we've seen related to Volt Typhoon, the activity we just talked about related to Flax Typhoon, and how the PRC is leveraging that internet backbone essentially to target the United States from, and how we can get after that problem.
Interesting. Okay. And then yeah, let's talk about just generally how your collaboration center works across government, because there's now several players, I guess, in this space in terms of trying to bridge the government and industry gap that we hear so much about in the cybersecurity space. You have CISA with the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative. I know several other sector risk management agencies work with their own sectors. How is this all kind of coming together so that you're getting the threat information to where it needs to go, whether that's out to industry or back to government? And what are the bridges across government right now?
Yeah, we've worked a lot over the last 4 years to partner with CISA as well as FBI and the other sector risk management agencies. I would say we all have a slightly different vantage point, so it's important for us to be partnering together. We obviously have the foreign intelligence aperture where we understand that perspective. CISA has a significant amount of incident reporting data. They have critical infrastructure data. They also are on charge of the federal civ network, so kind of government networks being targeted. And then FBI has their law enforcement angle and their cybersecurity data related to those. And so when we can bring that together, we can really understand the threat. And so our job is to operationalize as much as we can with the defense industrial base. And then if we see targeting of from our foreign intelligence aperture of other sectors, we engage with those sector risk management agencies as well. And so they are standing up fairly robust programs as well from an information sharing perspective. So we've been able to share a lot of lessons learned with those sectors so that they can kind of get the same concept with those that they have purview over. And then if we have intelligence related to that, we work through our interagency partners to share that information out with them. We also do a lot of joint engagements when it makes sense. I think the Volt Typhoon was a great example where partnering with industry, we really helped understand that network. And then CISA's Hunt team was able to do a lot of engagements with critical infrastructure owners to really operationalize that advisory that was going out. So that was really a success story between how we work together across the sectors. I think, when we see how these actors are targeting, they target critical infrastructure, they target US government networks, they target DoD networks and the defense industrial base with the same tactics and techniques. So I think what we found is when they did that, it was taking months to years sometimes to find these campaigns. And I think we've reduced that time down to really discovering some of these campaigns in days to weeks and then sharing it out broadly. So it's really working well, even though it can appear from the outside that there's a lot of different players in this space.
Yeah, and I think again, going back to NSA's role or the advantage of being able to see the foreign threat space, I think if you talk to folks in industry, there's still kind of this perception that the intelligence community kind of like holds on to what it knows and the intelligence that it has, and it won't share enough with industry. And I know that's something that your center has been established to help address. How do you think that's going? Are there ways that the NSA could still share more about the cyber threat with the critical infrastructure sectors? You mentioned how things are moving faster. Do you think things can ever get ahead of left of boom, as they say? What's going on
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I would say, we're always trying to operationalize the intelligence, but culturally that has been very different for the NSA as well as the broader intelligence community over the last several years. I think we even saw, just from a diplomacy perspective, we've been engaging a lot more in operationalizing intelligence. I think the thing for us is we have really great insights into plans and intentions sometimes. That's not always actionable to our industry partners. And so one of the things we've done in the Collaboration Center is we have a whole analytics cell here that's looking at industry data, industry feeds, so that we can understand what industry knows versus what we know that might be unique from an intelligence aperture, and using that to downgrade intelligence when we can, because how we know something might be sensitive. But the fact of knowing it might be widely known by others. And so really industry has helped us to bring some things down, to sanitize them down to a level that they're shareable, because industry also knows the same information. And so we are working to get information out, but we recognize that there was a lot of frustration when we were sharing information that wasn't actionable. So just telling you something bad may happen or we think it did is not a good strategy. And so if it's not actionable, we wouldn't share it. We have had really great examples where we have been able to get left of boom, where we knew that there were capabilities that were being developed or intended to be developed that could potentially be deployed against the defense industrial base or others. And we've worked with industry partners to get ahead of that. And so if we found, I mentioned, we do vulnerability research. If we found a 0-day vulnerability, we engage with the vendor so that they can patch that system before it's exploited globally. And so we've had a lot of those left of boom successes as well, where we're sharing information as much as we can. We could always do better. Culturally, it's always hard to know what is actionable and what's not. We also have spent a lot of time tracking the nation state actors, not necessarily thinking about the kind of the threats to versus the threat from angle. For us, like understanding what something we see in our foreign intelligence aperture means to industry or how it would be actionable. Over the last 4 years, I think we've all kind of felt each other out to say like, oh, that would be useful to you. We could share that. And so the more we build the trust and the more we understand what is helpful to each other, the more we've been able to get better at it. So definitely work to do, and we could definitely be better. But we've come a long way, and in a fairly short period of time, at least from our perspective.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned operationalizing intelligence is one of your key priorities. You laid out very well there how and why that's important, what you're doing. Are there any key metrics, key goals that you have in that space in the coming years?
Yeah, so we measure all of the engagement that we do with industry. We're up over thousands of analytic exchanges every quarter. So just tracking that, but it is really hard to capture the lessons learned from a metrics perspective from bringing our apertures together. So the ongoing collaboration between an expert on Russian cyber actors with an internet service provider and a cloud provider, that is really helping us understand things that are then being published. So as far as metrics go, we publish what goes out publicly from our cybersecurity advisories. We count what is shared non-publicly. We use the traffic light protocol handling of things that is non-public information but actionable for industry. We track how many of those get shared out, and then kind of the outputs of broader campaigns. So we try to decide that we're going to collectively work with industry on a specific topic, and have end states to that of, we want to learn more about this malware so we can build better detection signatures. We give those to industry for their aperture, and we use it in our signals intelligence aperture to better track these things. Those are all the things that we're trying to measure as we move forward, always with the goal of getting as much information down to an unclassified space so that it could be shared in action by the most people across the US.
Got it. All right. And you've mentioned the three major cybersecurity services that you provide, and I think General Hawk, the NSA's director, mentioned this new autonomous penetration testing platform in late July to kind of really use AI to help root out potential cyber vulnerabilities. And I know that's going to be offered through the Collaboration Center. Any more you can offer just on kind of what that is and how it's going to be rolled out potentially to industry?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. We pilot a lot of capabilities to understand which ones get after, the common attack vectors. How are they scalable? Can a small business implement this? And so one of the successful pilots that we ran was this autonomous penetration testing. So essentially, it's a commercial tool that an industry partner can use to run an internal autonomous penetration testing on their network. So they set up the test, it will run internally, scan their internal assets, and then give them essentially a remediation plan of, here's the devices you're running, here's ones that are vulnerable, here's how an actor would target them, and then they can go through and do the mitigation steps. We have found a significant response rate from that particular service because it gives step-by-step instructions, which these smaller businesses really value. And so we just moved from successful pilot in July to full scale actually this week. So that service will be available to anybody who wants to reach out to it, who's either enrolled in our program now or is interested in it. They can get to that at nsa.gov/Cybersecurity Collaboration Center and request to participate. Active DoD contract is the eligibility criteria for that.
Got it. And that's APT, but not to be confused with advanced
Yeah.
persistent threat, but they're connected.
We did say maybe we should call it defensive autonomous penetration testing just to avoid confusion. So we're not good at marketing at NSA, I got to admit. So yes, not to be confused with APT like the bad ones.
Yeah, I know Washington has a lot of acronym ninjas, so you need to get someone over there, but it works. More broadly, how does the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center see the potential for AI to help enhance cybersecurity and improve cyber defenses as a defensive measure?
So yes, we are looking at ways. We've talked a lot about the threats of AI when it comes to cybersecurity, but we're looking at ways that we can leverage AI for cyber defense. So one of the ways we talked about the autonomous penetration testing and learning the networks. We also think AI can be used to identify vulnerabilities faster. And really our interest is, how can we build in analytics that help with some of these more complicated techniques like the living off the land technique. So we're using AI to try to develop behavioral analytics so that a human doesn't have to go through all of the log data required to identify a technique like this. We can have it flagged to the analyst. So really trying to take the massive amounts of data that net defenders have to use and using AI to really put alerts in place so that if specific behaviors are detected, it will alert so that you can look into that further and try to streamline that process.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, given that Vault Typhoon has really brought living off the land to be kind of this next big, I don't know how you describe it, as the next big TTP, perhaps, that critical infrastructure has to be worried about. But how far out do you think that sort of automated ability to detect an attack like that, an infiltration like that is?
Yeah, we've seen success in that already, both from our internal use of it as well as our industry partners are leveraging AI to do vulnerability detection, heuristic detection, and things like that. And so, collectively as a community, building it together will get there faster. But we've seen an ability to do that already to date, and leveraging AI to kind of take our knowledge repositories as well. That has been really helpful, so that if we know information from all these different sources, AI can pull it together so that we really understand the threat picture.
Okay, all right. Well, and so one thing I did want to touch on, I know this is a big focus on your in your last job, and I'm sure it still is in your current job, is talent. You mentioned one of your priorities is building up a cadre of experts in this field. How will that happen? Tell us a little bit about what your focuses are there.
Yeah, so this is a problem that I think we're all facing is we're all competing for talent. We all want to bring in the best talent. And so we have a lot of development programs at the National Security Agency, which allows folks to come in and go through different tours in different offices. So we host a significant amount of development program participants here in the Collaboration Center. It's almost an easier bridge in because we use a lot of the commercially available tools that folks are learning about in school. So we like to bring in those development program participants, put them through other tours. So they're here in a defensive tour, they can tour over in an offensive cybersecurity mission, they can work in our ops floor and then come back. So building that pipeline of experts is one internally. We do a lot of cohort activities. I mentioned the culture change that is sharing with industry, just understanding what value industry has. So we run monthly cohort activities where we bring essentially SIGINT analysts from across the enterprise into a week-long experience to understand what are commercial tools, how do you leverage them, what insights industry has, how you can participate in this mission. So that has been really helpful for our internal pipeline of folks coming in. And then one of the things we talked about in the last role I had was making it easier for folks to move in and out of government. So many of our partners here have former NSAers at it. So they can be really useful for national security where they are. And so we view half of this as, we will never grow enough talent to compete. Director Ray, I think, said in a statement that the PRC has more cyber warriors than the US government and Five Eyes combined. And so partnerships is a big way we're trying to get after that talent problem. Look for ways to bring in the industry partners to work side by side with our analysts and send our folks out to work in industry spaces as well. So doing it really as a whole of nation approach from a talent perspective.
And I wanted to just leave the audience with one thing, either a prediction or something to watch out for in the coming year from the Collaboration Center. If you had anything that you'd want to leave us with there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're really focused on is operationalizing our information through industry. And so we are looking to build these campaigns that are not just NSA, they're really whole of government. And so last week you really saw, I think, the first step of that with the public advisory related to Flax Typhoon and what the US government was able to do with our industry partners. That's what we would like you to see more of moving forward, is that we can work together to really understand this sophisticated activity. We can develop the hunting guides to help everybody detect it, and get it out to the public as soon as possible, and then enable our interagency partners to take actions that impose cost on the actors for doing that. That is our goal every day, is to protect national security and do it with our partners. And so the goal would be through the end of the year for you to see more public advisories that are calling out this behavior, calling out the activity, and calling out how we should defend against it. That's really what we're looking to move forward to.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the time today, Kristina. Again, I'd like to thank our guest, Kristina Walter, Director of the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center at the National Security Agency. Thanks again.
Thanks, Justin.
And again, I'm Justin Doubleday. You're watching Federal News Network. Let me send you back to the studio now for more on the Cyber Leaders Exchange.